Welcome to our explainer on Mustafaİslamoğlu's incredible digital masterclass covering the beautiful names of Allah.
Get this. This free Akabe Media playlist packs exactly 98 masterclass level lectures. It's a complete theological curriculum. With over 250,000 views, the enduring legacy and sheer educational impact of this archive is absolutely undeniable.
So, our core focus here is El-Esmaul Husna, those profoundly beautiful names representing divine attributes in Islamic theology.
But before diving into specific names, they actually dedicate 19 intense videos just to lay down foundational concepts.
Right. Then the real journey kicks off, with Rob, explored exhaustively across 7 completely dedicated sessions. You'll see the syllabus progresses so logically, flowing from broad introductions straight into the pillars of divine mercy.
Names like Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, they get massive hour-and-a-half multi-part deep dives for total understanding.
Crazy enough, this deep foundational focus actually eats up over a quarter of the entire series. From there, the curriculum becomes this vast theological catalog, covering stunning specific names like El-Vadud.
Now, these definitely aren't quick summaries. Many of these thematic lectures demand up to 2 full hours.
You'll even find thematic interludes, brilliantly connecting these divine names directly to human development and revelation.
Later on, the lectures elegantly pair attributes like El-Kavi and El-Masid, revealing their deep structural harmony.
Amazingly, this massive Akabe Media archive has sat there as a free, fully accessible resource for 14 years.
So, with 98 comprehensive lectures waiting for you, how will understanding these attributes completely reshape your perspective?
All right, welcome back, everyone. Let's jump right into today's explainer. We are taking a really deep, structured look into a truly monumental piece of scholarship, Mustafaİslamoğlu's massive lecture series on El-Esmaul Husna. If you've ever wanted to understand not just the basic theological definitions, but the profound, life-altering philosophy behind the divine attributes, well, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to break down this enormous body of work to make it completely accessible and, most importantly, highly practical for your own life.
Take a look at this number, 98. That represents the total sessions in this single playlist. We are talking about roughly 100 hours of incredibly dense, scholarly exploration. I mean, in our fast-paced, 30-second clip digital world, a 100-hour deep dive into a single subject is just practically unheard of. This isn't just a casual watch. It's a meticulously crafted academic and spiritual journey. And our goal today is to give you the ultimate roadmap to actually navigate it.
To make sense of this massive amount of material, we've structured today's explainer into 5 clear parts. First, a giant knowledge journey. Second, introduction to methodology. Third, core names, Rab and Rekaman. Fourth, human construction by revelation. And finally, the great balance of divine attributes.
So, starting off with Section 1, a giant knowledge journey, grasping the macro scale.
Okay, so before we get lost in the heavy theology, what exactly is El-Esmaul Husna? Literally translated, it means the most beautiful names of Allah. But, and this is absolutely crucial, the source material treats these as way more than just a list of titles to memorize. They are framed as dynamic divine attributes that are meant to act as a direct blueprint for your own spiritual development. It's basically the ultimate guide to character building.
Moving right along to Section 2, Introduction to Esma Methodology and How to Prepare for the Knowledge. Now, this is wild. Imagine signing up for a masterclass in cooking, and you spend the first 9 weeks literally just learning how to hold a knife. That is exactly the level of patience required here. İslamoğlu spends the first 9 lessons, we're talking many hours of content, just teaching how to learn these names. The heavy emphasis is entirely on methodology over mere memorization. Because honestly, if you don't have the right lens to view the information, it's just not going to change you.
And that methodology boils down to this really strict 3-step framework used for the remaining 80-plus sessions. Step 1, he digs into the linguistic root of the Arabic word to find its ancient original meaning. Step 2, he drops it directly into its specific Quranic context to see how it operates in the text. And Step 3, which is the real game changer, human application. How does knowing this specific trait actually change your behavior tomorrow morning? It's a brilliantly effective way to teach.
All right, Section 3, Core Names, Rab and Rehan, the foundations of the series.
İslamoğlu dedicates a huge chunk of time to the concept of Rab, specifically across lessons 10, 11, and 12.
And he doesn't just use the standard English translation of Lord. He frames it as the ultimate active developer of our souls. Think of Rabb as the sustainer and cherisher who takes something in its completely raw state and gradually, purposefully guides it to perfection. It's all about profound, structured growth.
Then, right on the heels of Rabb, he unpacks Ar-Rahman in these epic, hour-and-a-half-long sessions. This attribute is all about the limitless bounds of divine mercy. But it's a very specific kind of mercy. Ar-Rahman is described as this entirely inclusive, unconditional mercy that just blankets all of creation no matter what. It is literally the existential love that allows the universe to simply exist.
When you put these two side by side, the theological brilliance of the curriculum just clicks. On the left, Rabb gives you that necessary structure, the discipline, and the growth. But then on the right, Rahman immediately follows to ensure all that development is totally wrapped in boundless, unconditional love. They balance each other out perfectly. It's like having the strict guiding hand of a master teacher paired with the infinite care of a loving creator.
Which brings us to Section 4, Human Construction by Revelation, the ultimate goal of the journey. Okay, this is probably the most fascinating part of the entire playlist. Lesson 25 is a complete structural anomaly. Up to this point, we've been tackling specific names. But boom, at Lesson 25, İslamoğlu just hits pause. He completely stops the list to deliver a standalone lecture titled Vahyen İnsanu İnşası, Human Construction by Revelation. This single session is actually the central thesis statement that holds the other 97 videos together. And the core takeaway from that pivotal lesson is this: studying theology is absolutely pointless if it just stays academic. We aren't just memorizing ancient vocabulary here. We are actively reconstructing our human identity. The whole idea is that every divine attribute we study should be mirrored right in our own daily lives. Knowing about divine patience should literally make you a more patient person. Knowing about justice should make you act more justly. That's the engine driving this whole masterclass.
Finally, Section 5, the great balance of divine attributes, navigating the rest of the playlist.
So you might be wondering, how do we even begin to categorize the massive array of attributes covered from Lesson 26 all the way to 98? Well, they actually fall into a perfect conceptual harmony, split into three main slices. You've got the names of Jamal, representing beauty and mercy. Then there are the names of Jalal, representing majesty and power. And finally, Kemal, representing absolute knowledge and wisdom. The source material emphasizes that a healthy spiritual life absolutely requires an understanding of all three, so you don't end up with a skewed or imbalanced worldview.
Looking at this framework, navigating those hours and hours of content becomes so much easier. If you want to dive into divine love and subtlety, you jump to the names of mercy, like El-Wadud in lessons 35 and 36. If you're needing to understand strength and absolute justice, you look at the names of power, like El-Aziz or El-Qahar. And for infinite awareness, you hit the names of knowledge, like El-Alim. Every single concept fits perfectly into this giant balanced matrix.
So wrapping up this incredible journey, here is what you really need to take away from today's explainer. We've explored a massive 98-part masterclass of deep theology. We've seen the strict three-step methodology that puts real-world application way ahead of memorization. We unpacked the core foundations of Rabb and Rahman. We discovered that the ultimate goal here is literally the reconstruction of human character. And we mapped out that beautiful systemic balance of beauty, majesty, and wisdom.
To close out today, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative question. Which divine name guides your life? Like, are you leaning really heavily on mercy right now, or are you in a season where you actually need structured growth? This source material isn't just a reference text. It's an invitation to take a hard look at your own character. I highly recommend diving into it yourself, picking a concept that hits home, and seeing how it might transform your perspective. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.
14 years ago, someone uploaded a video to YouTube. Well, actually, it was a 19-part, 18-hour video series.
Right, which is just massive.
Yeah, exactly. And the crazy thing is, it was just the introduction to a theology class. Like, just the intro.
Just setting the stage.
Right. And, 72,000 people started it. But only about 4,300 actually survived to the end of that intro.
It is a steep, steep drop-off.
It really is. So today, we are opening up the metadata of this 130-hour digital ghost town. We want to find out what happened to the people who stayed, why the others left, and, well, what brought them completely surging back later.
Because they do come back, which is the fascinating part.
They absolutely do. So welcome to another custom deep dive. And today, we're not reading a best-selling book for you.
No, not at all.
We aren't, summarizing a peer-reviewed journal or breaking down some long investigative article. Our source material today is highly, highly unusual.
It's essentially just raw data.
Yeah, literally just the raw metadata of a colossal YouTube playlist. We are looking at titles, timestamps, view counts, and upload dates. And that is it. Nothing else.
It's basically an investigative landscape that is completely stripped of the usual narrative markers.
Right, we don't have the text.
Exactly. We aren't dissecting the actual spoken words of the lectures themselves. We are analyzing the digital sediment left behind by this massive human endeavor.
I like that phrase, digital sediment.
Yeah.
And the playlist in question, it's titled El-Esmaul Husna, which translates to Lessons on the Beautiful Names.
Okay.
It features a speaker named Mustafaİslamoğlu, and it was uploaded by a channel called Akabe Media.
Right.
And we are looking at a playlist containing 98 videos with over 250,000 total playlist views, and all of this dates back well over a decade.
I mean, I really want you, the listener, to just visualize this for a second.
Yeah.
We are talking about roughly 130 hours of dense, uninterrupted theological lecturing.
Which is almost impossible to comprehend in today's media landscape.
It really is. In our current digital environment, a 3-hour deep dive audio show feels like a marathon.
Oh, for sure.
A 10-hour audiobook is, it's a huge commitment. But 130 hours.
Yeah.
That is the equivalent of a full-time university semester.
Easily. It's an entire curriculum.
It's a staggering amount of information to put into a single playlist. I mean, my initial thought looking at this spreadsheet of data was to ask, how could anyone possibly consume this?
Right. Who has the time or the focus?
Exactly. But the numbers tell a much more complicated story than just simple consumption. The audience didn't just watch this thing. They wrestled with it.
They absolutely did.
They abandoned it, they cherry-picked it, and then they returned to it.
And that's where the view counts become so important. They act as a literal numerical map of, human curiosity, aspiration, and attrition.
Yeah, the attrition is so real.
We can trace the exact digital footprints of this deep, intensive learning just by watching where the numbers swell up and where they completely collapse.
Well, let's start with that collapse, because it happens almost immediately, right?
Very likely, yeah.
You open this playlist, and the very first video is titled El-Esmaul Husna 11. And then in parentheses is Esma-i,
Which translates to introduction to the names.
Right, introductions to the names. Now, when I think of an introduction, whether it's like a book prologue or a syllabus review on the first day of class, I expect a 10-minute overview.
Keep it brief, hit the main points.
Yeah, maybe 20 minutes if the professor's particularly long-winded. You get the reading list, you learn the grading rubric, and you go home.
That is the standard pedagogical contract that we're all used to.
Exactly.
The preamble is meant to just set expectations before diving right into the core subject matter.
But the instructor here, he completely shreds that contract. This introduction is a massive multi-part saga. It spans 19 separate videos.
19 videos just for the intro.
Just for the intro.
Yeah.
It runs from lesson 1-1 all the way to lesson 9-3. And these aren't short little TikTok clips,
No, they're full-length lectures.
Video 1-1 is 59 minutes long. Video 1-2 is another 59 minutes.
Yeah.
Lesson 2-1 pushes over an hour.
It's just relentless.
It is. When you sum up just the videos labeled as Esma-i, just the introduction, it totals nearly 18 hours of content.
18 hours.
18 hours of preamble before a single primary subject is even taught.
And the audience's reaction to this structural choice is incredibly revealing.
Oh, I bet.
The very first video, Lesson 1-1, it boasts 72,000 views.
Which is huge.
It is. For a dense theological lecture uploaded 14 years ago, that is a massive initial surge of interest. It really implies a significant cultural or spiritual hunger for this specific topic.
But that hunger, it does not last. The attrition is just brutal.
It falls off a cliff.
72,000 people walk into the lecture hall for the first hour. But by lesson 1-2, the views plummet to 28,000.
More than half. Just gone.
Gone. At lesson 2-1, it drops to 19,000. By lesson 4-1, we are down to 10,000. It is a steady, just merciless bleed.
You can see them giving up in real time.
By the absolute end of this introductory phase, lesson 9 to 3, almost 18 hours into the series, the views have dwindled down to a mere 4,300.
It perfectly visualizes the collision between aspirational intent and actual endurance.
I call it the Gym in January effect.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Everyone signs up for the marathon of spiritual or academic learning on New Year's Day. You buy the new notebooks, you feel this surge of aspirational energy, and you tell yourself, I'm going to master this dense theological subject.
You're highly motivated on day one.
That explains the 72,000 people. But then the reality of the work sets in. I do have to push back on the instructor's methodology here, though.
Okay, what do you mean?
I look at this 18-hour block, and I just can't help but wonder, is this an intentional pedagogical filter or just an academic who really doesn't know how to edit himself?
That's a fair question.
Like, what evidence do we have that this wasn't simply a poorly planned, rambling professor who just alienated his own audience?
Well, it is a highly valid skepticism. However, if you look at the context of traditional Islamic theology, it suggests a deliberate design.
Really? How so?
In classical religious sciences, particularly regarding the names and attributes of the divine, the epistemological groundwork is considered, well, more dangerous to get wrong than the specific definitions later on.
Wait, dangerous?
Yes, dangerous in a theological sense. You cannot discuss the attributes of the divine without first spending exhaustive hours defining the boundaries of human comprehension, the nature of revelation, and the linguistic framework being used.
Oh, I see. So you need the rules of engagement first.
Exactly. The speaker, Mustafaİslamoğlu, is clearly operating within that classical, uncompromising academic tradition. He is laying down a theoretical foundation that legitimately demands 18 hours to build.
So you're arguing it is a gauntlet, like he is daring the audience to survive the theory before they are allowed to touch the practical theology.
It functions entirely as a filter, yeah. I mean, if the channel, Akabi Media, were interested in algorithmic virality, they would have structured this as, like, 5 beautiful names you need to know.
Right, a BuzzFeed listicle format.
Exactly. They would have bypassed the epistemology entirely. By forcing the audience through this 18-hour gauntlet, the instructor ensures that the 4,300 people who remain at lesson 9 to 3 are not casual browsers.
They are the diehards.
They have proven their intellectual stamina. They have been conditioned for the rigor of what is to come.
I really want you, listening right now, to think about your own learning habits for a second. How often do you stick with a new topic when the introduction alone demands 18 hours of your undivided attention?
Almost never.
We live in an era where, if a video doesn't deliver its thesis in the first 30 seconds, we swipe away.
We have zero patience.
Yet, here is a 14-year-old digital monument where thousands of people willingly sat through the equivalent of a part-time job's worth of preliminary context.
They endured it. But what is truly fascinating is the behavioral shift that occurs the very moment the curriculum finally transitions.
The pivot.
The metadata shows us that the audience wasn't entirely lost. They were just, well, waiting.
Yeah, the moment the introduction ends, the numbers completely invert. It's wild. Starting at lesson 10, the series moves out of Esma-i and into single-focused topics.
The actual names.
Right. The first one is titled Rab. And suddenly the instructor isn't talking about overarching theory anymore. He is focusing entirely on this single concept across multiple videos.
And the video durations also shift at this point.
They get longer, right?
Significantly. The introduction featured videos broken into roughly 50-minute segments, but as we move into these specific single-focus topics, the durations just jump.
So he stops breaking them up.
Exactly. The instructor stops breaking the lectures into digestible pieces and begins delivering massive, continuous 90-minute blocks.
And the audience comes roaring back for it. We ended the introduction at a dismal 4,300 views. The moment Lesson 10.1, titled Rab, is uploaded, the views instantly spike to 20,000.
A huge leap.
A massive overnight resurrection of the audience. And it continues. Lesson 13 is titled Ar-Rahman. It is an uninterrupted hour and 27 minutes long.
Which is a heavy watch.
And the views skyrocket to 26,000. Lesson 15 is Ar-Rahim, an hour and 28 minutes long, hitting 16,000 views. Lesson 17, El-Malik, an hour and 40 minutes long, hits 14,000 views.
To understand this massive return, we really have to look at the theological and cultural weight of the specific words being taught.
The words themselves are the draw.
Yes. We are analyzing the metadata, but the metadata is driven by the human desire to understand these specific terms.
Right.
Take the word rab, for instance. It is often poorly translated simply as Lord. But
Right.
linguistically and theologically, Rab implies nurturing, sustaining, bringing something from a state of infancy to a state of completion.
Oh, wow. That is much more active than just Lord.
It is. It is the foundational relationship between the creator and the created. It is a word repeated constantly in daily prayers.
So the audience sees the title Rab, and they recognize a concept that is deeply, deeply embedded in their daily lives.
Exactly. It's personal to them.
They might not care about 18 hours of epistemological theory, but they absolutely care about the word they recite every single day.
Yes, they are seeking fundamental existential grounding, and the same applies to Er-Rahman and Er-Rahim.
Which got huge numbers.
Huge. These are the two most frequently invoked names in the Islamic tradition. They form the invocation said before almost every daily action, the basmala.
Okay.
Er-Rahman denotes an overarching universal mercy that encompasses all of creation, while Er-Rahim denotes a specific, enveloping, and responsive mercy.
That's a beautiful distinction.
It is, and the audience's return, like 26,000 views for Er-Rahman, it proves that they are hungry for the deep, exhaustive exploration of the mercy they constantly invoke.
So, if I'm understanding this right, they are essentially treating a chronological university course like a searchable encyclopedia.
Yes, exactly.
They don't care about his carefully constructed 18-hour curriculum. They care about their immediate spiritual needs. They want the definitions of the words they use. They are basically cherry-picking the foundational pillars.
The data strongly suggests this. Viewers use these specific lectures as standalone reference materials.
They just pop in for the one they need.
Right. A viewer might feel a cultural or spiritual imperative to truly understand El-Melik, the sovereign or the king. So they search for it, they find this massive hour and 40-minute definitive lecture on it, and they consume it completely out of order.
They don't need the prerequisites.
Exactly. These foundational names function as evergreen anchor points in the digital library. They draw viewers back years after the chronological series ended.
What really strikes me is the sheer format of these anchor points. Like, the pedagogical environment has completely shifted from the intro. Well, it goes from a textbook overview, where things are, broken into 50-minute digestible chapters, to this immersive lecture style. The instructor is no longer holding the audience's hand with breaks.
He's off the leash.
Right. He is standing at the podium, basically saying, we are going to talk about El-Melik for an hour and 40 minutes, and we are not going to stop until we have exhausted the subject.
And he trusts them to keep up.
And the audience respects it. 13,000 people tuned in for an hour and 35 minutes on Lesson 19, El-Allah. They just settle into this grueling 90-plus minute rhythm.
Yeah, the extreme volatility of the introduction passes. A core, dedicated audience, supplemented by those search-driven cherry pickers, stabilizes the view counts.
The numbers level out.
They do. The middle lessons like El-Vakil, El-Afur, El-Ala, they hover pretty consistently between 8,000 and 17,000 views. It becomes a steady, predictable marathon of theological exploration.
Week after week, another massive word, another 90 minutes. You can almost feel the cadence of it just scanning down the spreadsheet.
It has a very clear rhythm.
But just as the audience settles into this rhythm of isolated definitions, the metadata shows the instructor hitting the brakes. He stops giving them what they want.
He pulls the rug out.
He does. He throws a massive structural curveball right into the middle of the playlist.
It is a profound disruption. If you look at the sequence, it goes Lesson 17, El-Melik, Lesson 18, El-Karim, Lesson 19, El-Allah.
Very structured.
Right. Everything starts with the Arabic definite articles, el or er. It's a rhythmic, standardized naming convention. It's a list. Humans love lists.
We do love a good list.
They provide a sense of progression and predictability.
But then we hit Lesson 25, and the title completely shatters the convention. No L, no er, no single word title. It is titled Vahin İnsaniyên Çası,
which translates to the construction of human by revelation.
I mean, that's a complex philosophical phrase. It is not a simple name.
Yeah.
And it is a robust video, coming in at 1 hour and 17 minutes.
It's a heavy concept.
But the view count completely plummets. It drops into a valley of 5,400 views.
Which is a harsh drop from the previous videos.
Exactly. To put that in perspective, Lesson 24, right before it had over 7,000 views, and Lesson 26, right after it jumps back up to almost 9,000 views.
So they intentionally skipped it.
Yes. Lesson 25 is actively ignored by a massive portion of the core audience. Is it possible, though, that the audience just recognized it wasn't a name, And thought it was an administrative upload, like an announcement video or something?
I mean, it is highly unlikely to be mistaken for an announcement given its hour-plus runtime. People can see the length before they click.
That's true.
The drop in views represents a rejection of the content's premise. The instructor paused the list to insert a structural capstone.
The capstone, okay.
Yes. After 24 grueling lessons focused outward, defining divine attributes, he pivots to explain the purpose of the study. He is shifting from the what to the why.
Okay, explain the philosophical weight of that shift for me. Why is the construction of human so critical to a class about divine names?
Because in this theological framework, learning the divine names is not merely a dictionary exercise. You aren't just memorizing trivia.
Right.
It is meant to be a blueprint for human behavior. To study Ar-Rahman, the merciful, is to understand how to manifest mercy in one's own life.
Oh, I see. It's supposed to be applied.
Exactly. To study El-Adl, the just, is to construct a framework for personal justice. The instructor pauses at lesson 25 to explicitly argue this thesis.
He's laying out his core argument.
He is telling his students that the revelation of these names is the very mechanism by which a human being is constructed. The theology is the mirror in which the human sees their potential.
But the audience completely rejects the thesis. That is the tragic irony buried in the metadata.
It really is.
The professor stands up and says, "Here is the key to everything we've been studying. Here is the meta-theory that makes it all matter to your actual life, your actual construction as a human being." And the audience collectively skips the video.
They just wanted the tactical list of names.
They just wanted the definitions. It highlights this universal tension in education. There's a constant tug of war between what a teacher knows is fundamentally necessary for holistic understanding and what the audience desires to consume.
The audience wanted the utility of the glossary. They wanted the quick reference.
We see this exact behavior today. Like, you look at health and wellness content online. People will completely ignore a detailed video on the psychological relationship with food, the why of their habits.
Yes, the deep internal work.
Right. They ignore the deep work. But they will give millions of views to a video titled 5 Foods That Burn Belly Fat. They want the tactical list. They reject the foundational theory of construction.
That's a perfect analogy. And the instructor here, acting as a rigorous academic, he refused to let them progress to the advanced material without first establishing this philosophical purpose.
He made them eat their vegetables.
He did. He deliberately sacrificed engagement and algorithmic momentum for educational integrity. He forced the medicine down.
And once that theoretical framing is established, the curriculum completely evolves. We move past the interlude of lesson 25, and the series plunges into the deepest end of the theological pool.
It gets intense.
The structure of the lessons undergoes a fascinating, highly demanding shift.
Well, the sheer length of the lectures becomes incredibly intimidating for one.
And get even longer.
Yes, the durations start to consistently hit the hour-and-a-half to nearly 2-hour mark. Lesson 31, El-Simd, is an hour and 36 minutes.
Wow.
Lesson 40, El-Alim, is a massive 1 hour and 55 minutes long. Almost 2 solid hours of continuous, uncompromising lecture on a single concept.
I mean, I can barely maintain focus through a 2-hour, heavily edited documentary, let alone a single-camera academic lecture on one specific word.
It asks a lot of the viewer.
But the real shift, the metadata anomaly that changes the entire nature of the course, happens around lesson 46 and 47. The naming convention changes again.
Another pivot.
Up until now, almost every lesson was a single concept. El-Qadir, El-Basir, El-Alim. But suddenly the instructor starts pairing them.
Putting them together.
Right. Lesson 47 is El-Fatir, El-Halik. Lesson 49 is El-Halim, El-Hafi. Lesson 50 is El-Hair, El-Ghaffar. He stops teaching single words and starts teaching pairs. Why the sudden shift halfway through this epic journey?
Because what we are witnessing is the mark of a highly advanced curriculum.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think of the structure of this playlist, like the study of chemistry. The first 40 lessons were the periodic table.
Oh, that makes sense.
The instructor was teaching the elements in strict isolation. Here is hydrogen, here is oxygen. You learn their individual atomic weights, their distinct properties. The audience spent dozens of hours mastering the elements.
Right, they learned Rab and El-Melic in a vacuum.
Exactly. But around lesson 47, the instructor essentially announces that the audience knows the elements well enough to begin doing chemistry.
They're ready to mix them.
Yes. You no longer learn elements in isolation. You learn how they bond. You learn how they react with one another. The instructor begins pairing concepts to show profound relational dynamics, balances, and contrasts.
Give me an example of the friction between these pairings. Why does pairing them make it so much more complex?
Let's take lesson 47. El-Fatir, El-Khaliq.
Okay.
Both these names loosely relate to the concept of creation, which might make them seem redundant to a casual observer. Like, why spend 2 hours on synonyms?
Right, that would be my first thought.
But placed together, the theological friction is breathtaking. El-Khaliq refers to the act of creation from absolute nothingness, bringing existence out of non-existence.
Okay, creating the raw material.
Yes. El-Fatir, however, implies cleaving, breaking open, or bringing forth a specific pattern or nature. It's like a seed breaking open to reveal a tree.
Oh, wow. So it's about the design within the creation.
Precisely. By placing them in the same 2-hour lecture, the instructor forces the student to understand the exact boundary where bringing something out of nothing meets the act of giving that new thing its inherent, intricate nature.
I mean, that is a massive leap in cognitive demand. You aren't just memorizing a dictionary definition anymore. You are mapping out a complex relational theology.
It's high-level synthesis.
You are looking at the exact intersection of two massive philosophical concepts. Look at lesson 51, El-Hay El-Qayyum. It is 1 hour and 47 minutes long.
And that pairing is one of the most significant in the entire tradition.
Really? Why is that?
Well, El-Hay means the ever-living, the source of all life. El-Qayyum means the sustainer of existence, the one by whom all things are upheld.
Why do those two specific concepts need to be bonded together in chemistry, to use your analogy?
Because life without sustenance is impossible, and sustenance without a living source is void.
They rely on each other.
Exactly. The theological argument is that life isn't just sparked and left alone to fend for itself. It is constantly actively sustained at every millisecond. By pairing them, the instructor is teaching the audience the exact mechanism of their own reality. It is a profoundly dense subject.
And you would logically assume that making a 130-hour course significantly harder and more conceptually dense would drive the remaining viewers away.
You'd think the attrition would spike again.
The cognitive load is just too high, right?
Right.
But the data absolutely screams the opposite. The view counts for these complex pairings are extraordinary.
They really are.
Lesson 51, El-Hay El-Qayyum, hits a staggering 26,000 views. That is the highest view count we see since the foundational spikes at the very beginning of the series.
It proves that this pairing method resonates on a deeply intellectual and spiritual level with the audience.
And it isn't an isolated spike. Lesson 53, El-Karim Es-Simi, hits 19,000 views. Lesson 59, El-Bair El-Latif, hits 20,000 views. We are deep into the curriculum here.
You're deep.
We are talking about the 50th, 60th hours of this course. Most people abandon their expensive online masterclasses by hour 2. But here, deep into the 70th hour of the course, lesson 71, El-Mevla Ir-Rezaq, is nearly 2 hours long and it hits 22,000 views.
The pairing of El-Mevla, which is the patron or protector, and Ir-Rezaq, the provider, clearly struck a chord.
Protection and provision.
Right. The audience recognizes that protection and provision are fundamentally intertwined. The data proves that the audience isn't just looking for simple, comforting answers.
They want the challenge.
When they are presented with complex relational theology, when they are treated like advanced students capable of handling conceptual synthesis, they rise to the occasion.
They actually crave that complexity.
Right.
It's like releasing a hit single from a massive, dense concept album. Even if a viewer hasn't watched the previous 70 lessons, they see the pairing of El-Mevla and Ir-Rezaq, and they recognize a profound conceptual synergy.
But the pairing itself acts as a magnet.
The engagement numbers for these dense, 2-hour relational lectures are a testament to the audience's deep thirst for substantive, challenging material. It completely upends the modern assumption that audiences only want brief, superficial content.
It really does. It shows a community willing to do incredibly hard intellectual work. But engaging with material of this density requires more than just intellectual curiosity.
What else is there?
It requires an unbelievable amount of physical and temporal endurance. Which brings us to the most subtle, yet perhaps the most telling piece of data in the entire playlist.
Yes, the passage of time. If you were casually scrolling through this massive list of 98 videos, analyzing the titles and the view counts, there's a tiny gray text tag over on the far right side of the screen that is incredibly easy to miss.
It blends right in.
It's the upload date.
Yeah.
For almost the entire playlist, starting from lesson 1.1 all the way down through dozens and dozens of videos, that tag simply says 14 years ago.
A static timestamp. It lulls you into assuming the playlist is just a monolithic archive.
It just becomes background noise.
Yeah.
14 years ago, 14 years ago, 14 years ago. But then you hit a specific threshold in the metadata.
Right around lesson 59.
Exactly. Look closely at lesson 59, El Ber El Ertif. The timestamp says 14 years ago. But the very next video on the list, lesson 60, El Karib El Varis, features a shift. The timestamp changes to 13 years ago.
That single-digit change, the shift from 14 to 13, is a monumental piece of forensic evidence.
It changes everything about how we understand this digital monument. Why is that single digit so important?
Because it shatters the illusion of the digital archive. It proves that this was not a complete series dumped onto the internet all at once.
It wasn't the Netflix binge model.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It wasn't a pre-recorded curriculum filmed over a weekend and uploaded in a massive batch. The shift in the calendar year proves that this was a living, breathing, sequential event.
It was happening in real time. It was likely a weekly or bi-weekly gathering. The instructor and the audience were living through this curriculum together week by painful week.
Over an entire calendar year.
It took over a full year of sustained effort from both the speaker and the audience to build this thing. When we see 98 videos on a YouTube playlist today, our instinct is to click play all and treat it like a completed product.
We forget the labor behind it.
We entirely forget the physical toll of its creation. When this was happening, it wasn't just content, it was a lifestyle. It was a massive physical commitment.
In our current era of algorithmic feeds and instant gratification, we have to deeply consider the psychological and spiritual endurance required to sustain a single, highly focused conversation for 130 hours over the course of a calendar year.
I really want you, the listener, to internalize the physical reality of this data. Imagine your life right now. Imagine dedicating every single week of an entire calendar year to sitting through a 2-hour, highly academic, uncompromising lecture.
It's exhausting just to think about.
You aren't switching topics to keep yourself entertained. You are focusing on a single word or a complex pairing of words, deeply exploring their theological nuances. You are doing this week after week, month after month.
You're scheduling your life around it.
You are attending through the dead of winter into the spring and straight through the summer holidays.
And think about the instructor. The sheer mental stamina required to research, prepare, and deliver that level of dense relational material consistently without losing the structural thread of the curriculum is staggering.
And the devotion required from the audience to repeatedly show up. Whether they were physically sitting in the lecture hall or digitally clicking on the video week after week, they weren't just passively consuming content.
They were participating in something bigger.
They were participating in a prolonged marathon act of devotion. They were building a permanent library of the mind.
It puts our modern attention spans into very sharp relief. We often complain if an audio program exceeds 45 minutes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yet here's a community that sat for nearly 2 hours to understand the specific theological friction between El-Misib, the responsive, and El-Hafiz, the preserver, in Lesson 61.
2 hours on that one friction point.
A lesson that, astonishingly, retains 22,000 views. They did this at a time when the internet was a very different landscape, one that hadn't yet been entirely optimized for quick dopamine hits.
That library of the mind remains. The 252,000 total playlist views aren't just a metric for advertisers. They are a testament to the enduring value of slow, meticulous, painful construction.
It stands as a digital monument.
It really does. It's a digital monument to long-form, uncompromising educational dedication.
And by purely analyzing titles, timestamps, and view counts without ever needing to critique the spoken words themselves, we have successfully mapped the life cycle of that monument.
We tracked the massive initial flood of curious students who thought they wanted to learn, and we watched the rigorous 18-hour pedagogical filter grind them down to the truly dedicated.
We saw how the course found its footing in the foundational pillars.
Right, the deep dives into Rab and Air Raman that drew tens of thousands of people seeking existential comfort.
We observed the fascinating philosophical interlude of the construction of human, where the instructor stubbornly prioritized his structural thesis over the audience's desire for a simple list.
He stuck to his guns.
He did. We analyzed the advanced pedagogical shift to complex chemical pairings, watching how the audience surprisingly resonated with the friction between concepts like el-Mevla and erizaq.
And finally, we found that tiny shift in the upload date, revealing the exhausting, year-long passage of time required to bring this 130-hour theological library into existence.
It changes how you look at the internet entirely.
It really does. Our lives, our interests, and our attention spans are constantly being recorded in these digital ledgers, in our saved playlists, in our viewing histories, in the hidden metadata of our daily consumption.
The evidence of what we value is permanently etched into the data we leave behind.
I want to leave you, the listener, with this final thought. Fast forward 14 years from right now. If a digital archaeologist were to come along and look purely at the metadata of your digital life, your search histories, the specific topics you willingly gave hours of your life to play, what kind of monument would they find?
What narrative would your view counts tell?
Are you endlessly clicking on the 10-minute introductions, searching for a quick fix, and then abandoning the course when the theory gets difficult? Or are you, like the thousands of people hidden inside this dataset, spending 130 hours mastering something profound? What is the metadata of your life actually building?
This material is a comprehensive index of a 98-video YouTube playlist by Akabe Media, detailing a long-form lecture series by Mustafaİslamoğlu on the names of God. But while the depth of this archive is incredibly strong, its current structural presentation severely limits its educational impact.
Right, and that's something we need to unpack immediately.
Exactly. Because the scholarship inside these lectures is clearly meticulous.
Oh, absolutely.
But our focus in this critique is solely on the architectural delivery of that scholarship. Because, right now, the container is kind of working against the content.
Yeah, it really is. It's a classic case of the delivery masking the value.
So let's look closely at the section discussing the first 19 introductory videos. The repetitive administrative titling across the first 19 introductory videos creates a massive cognitive barrier that obscures the foundational learning milestones for a new student.
That is such a crucial point.
I mean, the weakness here is fundamentally about how the brain processes navigational friction.
Right, when you just look at the list.
Yeah, we have 19 distinct hour-long uploads, and they are uniformly labeled Esma-i,
Which just translates to Introduction to the Names, right?
Exactly, Introduction to the Names. And the only differentiator provided to the student is, well, this really minor numerical variation in the file name.
Like 1112.
Right, 2-1, continuing all the way down to 9-3.
And the data trend you provided in the material highlights the exact consequence of this approach. It's pretty glaring.
It's wild. Video 1-1 has 72,000 views.
Yeah.
But by the time a learner reaches video 9-3, the viewership drops to 4,300.
Wow, I mean, that is a massive drop-off.
It's huge, and we really have to examine the mechanism behind that attrition. Because when a student approaches a new, highly complex theological subject, their brain requires schema, right?
Like mental frameworks?
Exactly. Mental frameworks just to categorize the incoming information.
Yeah, you have to know what box to put the ideas into.
Right. So if you present 19 videos that all essentially just say, Intro, Part X, you are completely withholding those categorical hooks.
It feels like walking into a library where the first 19 volumes are simply titled Book Part 1 through Book Part 19.
Yes, that is exactly what it feels like, without any indication of what chapter or concept is actually inside.
And the learner's working memory just becomes flooded because they cannot anticipate whether the upcoming hour will cover, historical context or linguistic roots.
Or philosophical prerequisites, right?
Yeah, they have no idea.
And I can see what they're going for here with the thoroughness of the archive. Like, capturing every minute of the introduction proves the depth of the series.
Sure, it shows that it's rigorous.
Right. But let's see how we can strengthen this presentation. The core weakness here is treating a public-facing educational platform with the mindset of a database administrator.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Rather than an educator.
Right. A database administrator just needs unique file names to prevent system overrides.
Right. 1112.
Exactly. But an educator needs to establish learning thresholds.
Yeah, totally.
So the suggestion for improvement here is to shift entirely from administrative cataloging to milestone-based titling. And really, to break this massive monolithic list into distinct, digestible subplaylists.
That structural shift is just vital for cognitive pacing.
It really is.
Because when a student sees 19 introductions, the perceived threshold to reach the quote-unquote actual material seems insurmountable.
Oh, for sure. It's like the curriculum feels like a waiting room you can never leave.
A waiting room you can never leave, yes. So, what are some concrete examples of how to actually execute this shift?
Okay, so instead of naming a track El-Esmaul Husna Dersleri 7, 1 Esma-i, you rename it to reflect the specific thesis of that particular hour.
Okay, so giving them a hint.
Right. If that video focuses on, say, the human capacity to understand the divine, the title should be Esma-i, the limits of human comprehension.
Oh, I like that. You give the learner a clear cognitive destination.
Exactly. Furthermore, physically group those 19 introductory videos into their own standalone beginner's guide subplaylist.
So they aren't cluttering up the main feed.
Right. By doing this, the main playlist can begin immediately with the specific names themselves, starting with Rab in video 20 and moving into Ar-Rahman in video 27.
That's clearly laid out. I wonder, though, if we've considered how renaming these tracks serves as more than just a categorization tool.
How do you mean?
Well, it acts as a pedagogical promise. By teasing the specific value of the upcoming lecture in the title, you are actively re-engaging those users who dropped off around video 4.
Oh, absolutely.
You're priming their neural pathways for the exact framework they need to absorb the next hour of philology.
Yeah, the title essentially becomes the syllabus.
Right.
It tells the learner exactly what cognitive task they are about to perform.
Exactly.
But, we've diagnosed why a student might refuse to click on video 4. But that naturally brings up the challenge of what happens when they actually do hit play.
And face the reality of the timeline.
Right. The friction basically shifts from initiating the study to enduring the study.
Yeah, endurance is the right word here.
Because the massive fluctuation in video duration without corresponding navigational aids fails to accommodate learners with varying levels of time and theological expertise.
Right.
The weakness lies in the utter unpredictability of the time commitment required from the student.
Because it's all over the place, right?
Exactly. Just looking at the raw data, video 19 is a relatively brief 22-minute.
Okay, very manageable.
Right. But as you scroll further down the curriculum, video 40, which covers the name El-Alim, spans an hour and 55 minutes.
Wow.
And later, video 75, covering El-Mujib and El-Hafiz, runs for an hour and 57 minutes.
Almost 2 hours.
Asking a learner to initiate a 2-hour digital video without any internal markers, that places an enormous strain on their attention span. It does, but, the material makes a strong case for this format by highlighting that these are highly complex, dense theological subjects.
Sure, you can't just skim this stuff.
Right, these are not quick tips for daily living. This is rigorous scriptural and philosophical exegesis.
Yeah.
And traditional Islamic scholarship, and really any deep text-based tradition, relies heavily on the continuous flow of thought found in a live lecture setting.
Like an unbroken immersion.
Exactly. That immersion is arguably part of the methodology itself. So chopping a profound attribute of God into algorithmic sound bites could arguably fundamentally destroy the reverence of the study.
That's a fair point. But is there a risk that focusing solely on preserving that traditional uninterrupted lecture format might overlook the biological limits of a digital learner's working memory?
Oh, that's a really interesting angle.
Because the weakness here is not the 2-hour duration itself.
Right, the depth is necessary.
Absolutely. The weakness is the lack of internal signposting within that 2-hour digital span.
Ah, I see what you're saying.
When you present a 2-hour video without chapters, you are asking the brain to hold on to an overwhelming amount of information without giving it a save point.
A save point. I love that.
It operates identically to reading a 100-page textbook chapter without a single paragraph break or subhead.
The brain would just give up.
Literally. It stops processing new information because it doesn't know how to file what it just heard.
Okay, so what I really like about this part is that we are distinguishing between live pedagogy and digital pedagogy.
Yes, exactly.
Because in a live physical lecture hall, a listener naturally senses the speaker's transitions, right? Through body language or prolonged pauses.
Or just the shared, focused energy of the room.
Right. But a digital viewer staring at a red progress bar does not have access to those invisible cues.
Not at all. If a viewer has to pause the video at the 45-minute mark to go to work, they have no idea if they are pausing at the natural conclusion of a thought or right in the middle of a critical theological transition.
And then when they return,
Their brain has to spend immense energy just reestablishing the context.
exactly. We have to artificially provide those lost physical cues to replicate the pedagogical structure online. Waypoints within the longer videos. Provide clear entry and exit points for the audience to consume the material in phases.
Because providing those anchors completely changes the learning experience.
It respects the depth of the content while building a functional bridge to the modern learner's reality.
Right. So, what are the concrete steps to build those waypoints? What can they actually do?
Well, the most immediate application is to implement detailed, time-stamped chapters in the YouTube metadata for any video exceeding the 45-minute mark.
Okay, yeah.
So take that nearly 2-hour video 75 we mentioned, which covers 2 distinct names, El-Musib and El-Hafiz.
Right.
It is crucial to provide exact timestamps in the description indicating exactly where the transition between these 2 distinct names occurs.
Yeah, a learner shouldn't have to guess when the topic shifts.
Exactly. And secondly, we suggest creating a brief syllabus document linked in the video descriptions for those highly extended lectures.
Oh, like a study guide.
Yes. So for an hour and 40-minute upload, provide a suggested viewing schedule. Explicitly state in the description like, Day 1, watch to minute 35 for the linguistic definition.
I see.
Day 2, watch to minute 1.15 for the historical context. Day 3, watch to the end for practical application.
That is such a vital intervention. By offering a structured study guide, you are essentially granting the learner permission to pace themselves.
Yes, exactly.
You are transforming a daunting video file into an accessible digital course module.
Right. But once we provide those structural waypoints within a single video, we run into a much larger architectural challenge, which is how these individual lectures talk to one another across the entire 98 video span.
Ah, right. The big picture.
Exactly. The purely sequential cataloging of the material misses a vital editorial opportunity to highlight the profound thematic connections between paired attributes.
This elevates the critique from user interface friction directly into the realm of curriculum design.
It really does, because as I understand it from the notes, the argument here is that the playlist simply acts as a comprehensive chronological archive.
Just a timeline.
Right. It's organized exactly as it was delivered, over time. Lesson 1 is followed by Lesson 2, followed by Lesson 3, all the way to 98.
But the weakness of treating this archive as a purely sequential list becomes incredibly apparent in the back half of the series.
How so?
Well, as the lectures progress, the speaker deliberately begins pairing names together in single sessions.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. We see this in video 70, which covers El-Kahar, the subduer, and El-Muntakim, the avenger.
Okay.
We see it again in video 50 with El-Hayr, the good, and El-Ghaffar, the forgiver.
Right, right.
However, the structural presentation treats these purely as sequential list items. It treats video 50 and video 70 as just isolated steps on a 98-step staircase.
So a key theme running through this material seems to be that the structural container is actively ignoring the conceptual nuance of the content it actually holds?
Exactly. Building on that point, what if we looked at it from the perspective of comparative theology?
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Treating the playlist as a mere chronological checklist deeply diminishes the dialectic teaching happening inside the lectures themselves.
Right, because checklists just encourage passive consumption.
Exactly. But thematic mapping encourages active comparison.
Yes.
Think about it. El-Kahar and El-Muntakim are attributes of divine majesty and justice. El-Hayr and El-Ghaffar are attributes of divine mercy and grace.
Right. They are thematic pairs.
Yeah. But by just listing them in the metadata as Lesson 56 and Lesson 50, the interface fails completely to communicate the underlying reasons these names are paired.
You are fundamentally depriving the student of the theological tension the speaker intended to create.
Exactly.
It turns a beautifully structured comparative dialectic into a mindless progression of files.
Yeah, a mindless progression.
And it leaves the learner to figure out the profound conceptual contrast entirely on their own, halfway through the video.
Instead of priming them.
Right, rather than using the metadata to prime their minds for that contrast before they even hit play.
That makes sense. But could the evidence also support a different conclusion? Like, maybe the sequential order was designed to mirror a specific spiritual journey?
Oh, that's a great question.
Is the connection between the chronological order and the thematic order fully established in the material? Or is that an area to potentially bolster?
That is an excellent pushback, because if the sequential order is indeed a deliberate spiritual journey, for example, guiding the student from understanding God as creator, to God as sustainer, to God as judge,
Right.
then the metadata is still failing because it never states that intention.
Ah, I see. It's just silent on the matter.
Exactly. Whether the true underlying structure is based on thematic clusters or a sequential spiritual journey, the current playlist format is completely muting it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So the suggestion for improvement here is to enhance the organizational framework by explicitly mapping out these thematic clusters, transforming the archive into an interconnected, mapped curriculum.
We really need to move from a linear timeline to a conceptual web.
Precisely. The metadata must become an active teaching tool rather than just a passive filing system.
So let's outline some concrete examples of what that conceptual web looks like in practice.
Okay, first, create and link to a visual roadmap or an infographic in the playlist description.
Like a flowchart almost?
Yeah, exactly. This roadmap should explicitly categorize the 99 names into thematic groups.
Okay.
Create distinct visual branches for the creator attributes, the sustainer attributes, the majestic attributes, and the merciful attributes.
Ah, that would be so helpful.
Right. When a listener can visually see that El-Kahar and El-Muntakim belong to a specific thematic family regarding justice, they instantly understand why they are being taught in the exact same session.
Right. Their brain builds a conceptual bridge before the lecture even begins.
Exactly. And providing that visual schema addresses the exact cognitive load issue we discussed earlier regarding the introductory videos.
It really does. It scales that solution across the entire curriculum.
Yes. Secondly, in the video descriptions of these paired lectures, include a brief editorial note. Do not just rely on the titles.
Give them a bit more context.
Right. Write a 2-sentence primer explaining the dialectic relationship between the two names being covered.
Okay, like what?
Tell the listener, like, in this session, we explore the balance between divine power and divine retribution.
Wow. Yeah.
It completely contextualizes the 2-hour commitment. It shifts the learner's mindset from, I am watching video 70 to, I am exploring the mechanics of divine justice.
That shift fundamentally respects the learner's intellect.
It really does.
You are handing them the architectural blueprints and showing them how the cathedral is built, rather than just pointing them to a massive pile of bricks.
That is a perfect way to summarize it. So to synthesize the scope of our critique today,
Let's do it.
first, we must mitigate the immense cognitive overload at the beginning of the series. We suggest abandoning the repetitive administrative titles across the first 19 videos.
Getting rid of those 1-1, 1-2 labels.
Yes. Renaming them based on specific learning milestones and physically grouping them into a distinct beginner's guide sub-playlist.
Crucial step.
Second, we have to respect the varying capacities of digital learners encountering 2-hour lectures.
Right, giving them those save points.
Exactly. Implementing detailed timestamps and providing syllabus-style viewing schedules will grant learners the necessary breaks to make this sprawling material digestible.
Absolutely.
And finally, we need to explicitly map out the thematic relationships between paired concepts through visual roadmaps and editorial metadata.
Elevating the presentation from a mere chronological checklist to an active, interconnected curriculum.
Yes. And honestly, executing these structural changes requires no alteration to the original scholarship.
None at all.
But it will completely revolutionize how users interact with that scholarship.
For sure. The theological depth is already present. The delivery system simply needs to rise to meet it.
Exactly. By applying these structural concepts, you transform the material from a daunting archive into an accessible world-class digital curriculum.
It's totally doable.
So we warmly invite you to prototype these adjustments. Draft up a few milestone-based titles, map out a visual infographic for a thematic cluster, and implement some detailed timestamps.
And then send it back to us.
Yes, submit your revised work back to the critique for further exploration. Because right now, the museum is filled with priceless artifacts.
We just need to install the lighting.
Exactly. Install the lighting and draw the map for the visitors. Thanks for joining us for this critique, and we'll see you next time.
Imagine walking into a university classroom, taking your seat, and listening to the professor read the syllabus.
Okay.
And explain the ground rules for the course, right? But now, imagine that professor keeps explaining those ground rules for 19 hours before teaching the actual subject.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably walk out.
Right, you'd walk out. We all would. And yet, in the digital world, which is, a place pretty notorious for non-existent attention spans, hundreds of thousands of people have not only stuck around for that exact scenario, but they've actually come back for more.
It's wild. It completely upends our fundamental assumptions about, well, how human beings consume information on the internet.
Totally.
Because we're told constantly that if you don't hook someone in, like, the first 3 seconds, they're gone forever.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today, for this deep dive, we're looking at something completely different from our usual research papers or articles.
Yeah, no academic PDFs today.
Right. Our source material is actually a massive digital archive. It's a YouTube playlist titled El-Esmaul Husna, which translates to Lessons on the Beautiful Names.
And it's an extensive theological lecture series, right?
Exactly. Delivered by Mustafaİslamoğlu. And it was published by the channel Akabe Media roughly 13 to 14 years ago.
So this is early YouTube era.
Yeah, totally. And the raw data we're analyzing covers the first 86 videos of what is a 98 video collection. And get this, it has collectively amassed well over 250,000 views.
Wow. What's fascinating here is that it functions like a digital time capsule.
It really does. But real quick, just to set the parameters for you, the listener, we are approaching this purely as an architectural marvel of digital pedagogy.
Right. We have to be clear on that. We are setting aside the specific religious and theological doctrines entirely.
Yes. Remaining completely impartial on the content itself. We're not endorsing or taking sides on the religious viewpoints.
Exactly. We just want to marvel at the sheer dedication of conveying this source material. We want to understand the shape of the information,
Yeah, the psychological mechanisms of the delivery and, well, what the view count data reveals about human learning behavior.
Because the shape of this playlist is just wild.
Oh, if you were a YouTube strategist today, you would look at this track list and pull your hair out.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us back to that 19-hour syllabus I mentioned earlier.
Right, the introduction.
Yeah. The first 19 videos in this playlist all share the same parenthetical title, which is Esma-i Giriş. That means Introduction to the Names.
19 videos, just for the intro.
Just for the intro. And these are not quick, friendly welcome videos. They range from 30 minutes on the short end to well over an hour.
Wow.
Video 6, part 1 is an hour and 4 minutes. Video 3, part 2 is an hour and 9.
That is a massive time commitment.
It's like taking a university course where the syllabus and foundational concepts take an entire semester to explain before you even start the coursework.
Right.
So I have to play devil's advocate here. Is this kind of intense, slow-burn foundation building common in digital theological deep dives? Because honestly, isn't this just terrible user experience design?
Well, I mean, if the goal was rapid audience growth,
yes,
it would be terrible design.
Exactly. If your goal is to educate the masses, why intentionally lock your core message behind a 19-hour paywall of time?
It's a fair question. But we have to look at the psychological mechanism of what a 19-part introduction actually achieves.
Okay.
Because in rigorous academic disciplines, especially theology or philosophy or even theoretical physics, you cannot debate or even understand the concepts until you've established a shared epistemology.
Epistemology meaning how we know what we know, the ground rules.
Precisely that. The speaker is establishing a shared vocabulary and a shared methodology for interpretation.
Right, because if you don't define the tools of analysis beforehand,
the entire intellectual structure collapses later on.
I see.
But beyond just defining terms, there is a real behavioral mechanism at play here. This brutal upfront investment. It acts as a filter.
A filter?
Yeah. It signals to you, the viewer, that this is not casual entertainment. It weeds out the passive scrollers and actively selects for a highly intentional, deeply committed learner.
So you're saying the friction is the feature.
The friction is absolutely the feature. I mean, you don't sit through 19 hours of preliminary framing unless you are genuinely committed to understanding the root mechanics of the subject.
That makes a lot of sense. It creates like a psychological buy-in.
Exactly. Once you've invested that much time into the introduction, your sunk cost cognitive bias actually works in favor of your education. You're primed to pay attention.
I can see how that works in a traditional classroom where you're kind of a captive audience. But, this is the internet.
Right, you can just click away.
Or, as the data shows, you can just skip ahead. Because if we trace the viewer data, that whole filter theory gets a little complicated.
Oh, the view counts tell a fascinating story about intention.
They really do. Let's look at the numbers. The very first introductory video has a massive 72,000 views.
Which is the top of the funnel, the curious clickers.
Right. And as you'd expect, the numbers steadily decline as the introduction drags on. By video 19, which is the final part of the intro, the views have dropped to 4,300.
Which, honestly, still isn't bad for a 19-hour intro.
True. And that drop makes sense to me. But then, the introduction ends, the series shifts into its core material, exploring specific names, starting with Rab.
And that's where the numbers explode.
Yes. Video 20, the first Rab video, jumps to 20,000 views. And then a few videos later, video 27, part 1 of Raman, hits 26,000 views.
Wow.
So what does this all mean? I have to push back on the idea of this deeply committed core audience. If the filter worked, shouldn't the audience stabilize at 4,000?
You would think so?
Are learners just getting fatigued by the intros and cherry-picking the specific topics they want?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you're touching on a duality in how digital archives are used.
A duality?
Yeah. You're assuming the playlist is only experienced as a linear journey, right? Start at video 1, end at video 98.
Sure, like a standard course.
But that massive spike in views for Rab and Raman reveals a completely different psychological behavior, which is search-driven learning.
Oh. Meaning people are actively typing those specific concepts into the search bar, and the YouTube algorithm is dropping them right into video 27.
Exactly. We have to consider the cultural and theological weight of these specific terms.
Right.
Raman, translating to the beneficent or the compassionate, is a massive central concept.
And people are specifically looking for that.
Yes. And later in the playlist, video 65 covers El Hayy El Qayyum and hits 26,000 views as well.
That's fascinating.
For a significant portion of the audience, this playlist is not a sequential course. It's an encyclopedic reference library. They're parachuting in to extract specific insights they need for their own studies at that moment.
So it's functioning as two completely different products simultaneously.
Precisely.
For the 4,000 people who survived the intro, it's a grueling linear masterclass. But for the 26,000 people watching Raman, it's a standalone documentary.
That is the perfect way to categorize it. And what makes this structural evolution even more fascinating is how the speaker reacts to this phase of the material.
What do you mean?
Right when these highly searched, specific names begin, the physical architecture of the videos changes dramatically.
Wait, you mean the duration?
The duration skyrockets.
Oh, that's right.
During the Rab sequence, the videos hover around like 35 to 49 minutes. But starting with Raman, the speaker shifts into an entirely different gear. The lectures balloon into marathon feature film-length episodes.
It's staggering. Video 27, Raman Part 1, is an hour and 27 minutes. Video 31, El-Malik, is an hour and 40 minutes.
It's intense.
Almost every video from this point forward is over an hour and a half. But wait, if we know that people are parachuting in from search, wouldn't standard logic dictate that you make the videos shorter?
You'd think so, yes.
Like if someone stumbles onto your video from a search bar, you don't hand them a 2-hour lecture. You give them a 10-minute summary to capture their limited attention, right?
Well, that is the logic of someone trying to game an algorithm. But the methodology here ignores the algorithm entirely in favor of deep pedagogical integrity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the speaker understands that to adequately explain a concept as vast as Raman, 40 minutes is simply insufficient.
So he just refuses to compromise.
He demands that the digital audience rise to the level of the material, rather than diluting the material to meet the presumed laziness of the digital audience.
That is so rare on the internet.
It is. Yeah. And maintaining intellectual rigor for an hour and 40 minutes, single-handedly, requires a masterful grasp of the subject, and the fact that tens of thousands of people watch these specific videos proves that there is a deep hunger for uncompromising, long-form exploration.
People want the deep end of the pool, even if they just parachuted in.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Just as the speaker settles into this predictable, grueling rhythm, going name by name, concept by concept, hour and a half by hour and a half, he breaks his own rules.
Ah, yes. There is an anomaly in the track list.
A huge anomaly. I'm looking at video 39, and it is completely jarring. Let me paint the picture for you, the listener.
Let's go for it.
So videos 37 and 38 are deep dives into the concept El-Allah. Videos 40 and 41 cover El-Habir. It's a very systematic, alphabetical approach, right?
Very structured.
But sitting right there in between them, disrupting the entire flow, is video 39. It's titled Vayin Ansani Inshasa, which translates to the construction of the human by revelation.
It entirely abandons the naming convention.
It does. It's like you're reading an encyclopedia alphabetically, right?
Yeah.
You read the entry for apple, you turn the page for apricot, and sitting right in between them is a chapter on how to bake a pie.
That's a great analogy.
It just leaps off the screen at you.
Yeah.
Why on earth would he break the pattern right there? He's 39 videos into this series.
Well, this raises an important question about teaching. It's a brilliant pivot, and it actually strikes at the heart of the difference between pedagogy, which is teaching children, and dragogy, the methodology of teaching adults.
Wait, andragogy?
Yeah, adult learning. Adult learners need to know why they are learning something. They need to see the application.
Ah.
And based on the title, The Construction of the Human by Revelation, the speaker is taking a highly strategic pause to address that exact need.
A pause for application. So moving from the abstract to the tangible.
Think about what you as the viewer have experienced up to this point. You've sat through 19 hours of introduction. Yeah. You've sat through 20 massive lectures defining the attributes of the divine. The cognitive load of processing that much abstract theology is immense.
I can't even imagine.
But theology, especially in this context, is not meant to be a purely academic exercise of memorizing definitions. If it doesn't change the practitioner, it's just trivia.
Oh, the construction of the human. He's turning the mirror around.
He is holding the mirror directly up to the audience. This 1 hour and 17-minute session shifts the focal point entirely. It takes all of those massive abstract concepts and routes them directly into human application.
That's really powerful.
He's essentially asking, now that you have defined these attributes, how does this knowledge constructor shape your own character? He's bridging the gap between divine names and human character building.
That placement is actually genius now that I think about it.
How so?
Because if he puts that video at the very beginning of the playlist, it has no weight because the audience doesn't understand the concepts yet. But if he tacks it onto the very end as video 98, it just feels like an afterthought, like a quick moral of the story wrap-up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But placing it right in the middle.
Placing it at video 39 forces the listener to fundamentally recalibrate their lens for the rest of the series.
It acts as a thematic fulcrum. Everything you learned before video 39 was building the conceptual vocabulary. Everything you learned after video 39 is now viewed through the lens of personal transformation.
It really is a masterstroke of course design.
It is.
And it seems like that shift in perspective empowers the speaker to push the audience even harder, because once we cross that fulcrum, the back half of the playlist turns into what I can only describe as a marathon.
Oh, the cognitive demands placed on the listener in the latter half of this series are just extraordinary.
Yeah, let's talk about the structure from video 46 all the way through to 86. The speaker completely abandons the single topic approach.
He starts pairing them.
Yes. Instead of exploring one name per video, he begins pairing multiple concepts into single epic-length sessions.
Right.
For example, video 60 covers El-Qadir alongside Zu Salali vel Ikram. Video 61 pairs El-Fatur with El-Halik. Video 79 pairs El-Fali with El-Bidi. And the run times are just punishing.
They consistently approach the 2-hour mark.
Video 62 runs for 1 hour, 57 minutes, and 29 seconds. That is almost 2 unbroken hours of dense paired lecturing.
It requires an incredible amount of stamina.
I have to admit, when I first saw the structural shift, my cynical brain assumed he was just running out of steam.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like a professor who realizes there are only 3 weeks left in the semester, but half the syllabus is left to cover, so he just starts cramming chapters together to cross the finish line.
It's a natural assumption, but the data actually contradicts it. If you're rushing to cross the finish line, you don't record 2-hour lectures. You truncate. You summarize.
That's true.
The expansion of time indicates an expansion of depth. By pairing these concepts together, the speaker is moving the audience into the highest tier of cognitive processing, which is relational synthesis.
Relational synthesis. Break that down for me. You mean understanding how two different things interact with each other?
Think about how our brains build knowledge. First, we identify a concept in isolation. A toddler learns what a dog is.
Okay.
Then we learn a second concept. The toddler learns what a cat is. But true, systemic understanding only happens when the brain is forced to evaluate the relationship between those concepts.
Oh.
How are they similar? How do they contrast? How do they balance an ecosystem?
It makes me think of learning to cook. You can spend a week learning everything there is to know about salt, and you can spend another week learning everything about caramel.
Right.
But until you taste salted caramel, you don't actually understand how the sharp chemical bite of the salt fundamentally elevates the rich sweetness of the sugar. The magic is in the pairing.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the pedagogical strategy here. He's pairing attributes of creation with attributes of shaping. He's pairing concepts of power with concepts of majesty.
Wow.
By doing this, he forces the viewer's brain to fire new neural pathways. You can no longer just passively absorb a definition. You have to actively build a mental model of how these vast, complex ideas balance one another.
It prevents the knowledge from becoming stagnant. It's treating the viewer's intellect with an incredible amount of respect.
He is demanding that you do the heavy lifting of synthesis alongside him.
And if we step back and look at the macro structure of this entire 86 video dataset, it perfectly maps onto the ideal trajectory of adult cognitive development.
It really does. You start with 19 hours of epistemological grounding, learning the rules of the game.
Right. Then you move into focused, deep dive definitions.
Next, you hit the structural anomaly of video 39, which forces personal behavioral application.
And finally, you spend the last 40 episodes engaged in complex relational synthesis for 2 hours at a time. It is a stunning architectural achievement.
It really is awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
We are talking about a YouTube playlist uploaded over a decade ago.
Yeah, it's so easy for us to dismiss early internet video as a wasteland of grainy vlogs and cat videos. We tend to think that sophisticated digital education is a recent invention, born out of high production masterclasses and modern edtech platforms.
But this archive, this El-Esmaul Husna playlist by Akabe Media, stands as a silent monument to deep, uncompromising long-form education.
It absolutely does.
And it serves as a powerful reminder that the human appetite for profound, complex learning has always existed on these platforms.
Yeah.
When you strip away the specific theological doctrines, which, again, we observe purely impartially, what you're left with is a masterclass in educational stamina. Delivering this level of nuance, maintaining that degree of rigor over almost 100 episodes, and holding a digital audience's attention for that long, well, it challenges every modern assumption we have about attention spans.
It absolutely shatters them. We live in an ecosystem that actively punishes creators if they don't produce bite-sized, gamified content. We're just drowning in 60-second viral shorts.
Yeah, we are.
And yet, this playlist sits there, 13 years old, with hundreds of thousands of views, calmly demanding hundreds of hours of focused, unbroken attention, and people willingly give it.
Because when the value of the knowledge is perceived as high enough, the audience will endure any amount of friction to acquire it.
Exactly. And that brings me to a final thought, something I want to leave you, our listener, to mull over today. When we look at the sheer mountain of commitment required just to press play on a series like this, it begs a very personal question about our own intellectual pursuits.
It really does.
In our current world of instant gratification, endless swiping, and algorithmic shortcuts, what subject are you curious enough about? What topic is so vitally important to you that you would gladly sit through a 19-hour introduction just to learn the basics?
Welcome to the debate. If you were tasked with explaining the infinite nature of God, where would you even start?
That's a massive question.
Right?
Would you build this unbreakable, monolithic foundation? Or would you just, would you force the human mind straight into a paradox?
Well, that's exactly the tension we're looking at today. We are examining a truly monumental pedagogical and theological architecture.
Yes, we're talking about Mustafaİslamoğlu's extensive lecture series, El-Esmaul Husna, published by Akabe Media.
And just for context, we are talking about over 70 distinct lessons here. It's hundreds of hours of deep theological discourse, focusing entirely on the beautiful names of God. Yeah, it's an incredible undertaking. And the underlying question we're really tackling is how that immense curriculum is structured. Like, what does that structure actually tell us about how human beings come to understand the divine?
Exactly, because the organization of this much material is never an accident.
No, never. So does the architecture of this curriculum suggest that a foundational, singular understanding of primary attributes, things like, mercy and lordship, is the ultimate key to theological comprehension? Because I will be arguing exactly that.
Okay, lay it out for me.
The massive, isolated focus on these foundational concepts early in the series, it establishes a strict hierarchical prerequisite. You basically cannot understand the complex interplay of divine traits without first mastering the monolithic, simple ones. The architecture insists on foundation over absolutely everything else.
Well, I come at it from a different way. I will be arguing that the curriculum's later evolution, where it begins, explicitly pairing complex attributes together, reveals its true synthesized theological objective.
So the foundation is just a stepping stone for you?
The foundation is necessary, of course, but true theological understanding relies on the dialectical tension between divine qualities. The dual nature lessons, I believe, are the ultimate goal of the entire curriculum.
Let's lay out the groundwork from my perspective first. When you approach a curriculum with this kind of density, the allocation of time isn't just some scheduling choice, right? It is the clearest indicator of the instructor's pedagogical priority.
Sure, time is a resource.
Exactly. And İslamoğlu deliberately forces a deep, singular focus on foundational attributes long before the student is allowed to take a single step toward complexity.
You're talking about that early block of lessons, I assume.
I'm talking about a staggering cognitive investment. Look at the introduction alone. Esma-i spans 9 distinct lessons.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's weeks of study just to prepare the human mind for the concepts that follow. And what follows? We get massive, unbroken blocks dedicated solely to fundamental singular concepts. We get 3 full lessons spanning multiple videos, entirely dedicated to Rabb, the Lord or Sustainer.
Right.
Then we get Ar-Rahman, the entirely merciful, taking up 2 full lessons, followed immediately by Ar-Rahim, the especially merciful, taking up another 2.
The commitment to the baseline is immense. Yes, I don't disagree with that.
But it's more than just a baseline. It is a psychological necessity. This structure proves a clear pedagogical hierarchy. The curriculum is basically arguing that human beings are actually incapable of comprehending the nuances of divine interaction until these monolithic pillars are thoroughly established.
Incapable? That's a strong word.
It's true. Mastery of isolated grace and isolated lordship is required because without them, the human mind would just buckle under the weight of the later, more majestic attributes.
I hear you, but let me push back a bit. While that foundational investment is undeniably massive, the true intellectual weight of this series, the real destination that the student is painstakingly being prepared for, lies in its latter half.
How so?
Well, starting in the late 40s of the lesson plan, we see a fundamental, very deliberate shift in the pedagogical strategy. The curriculum actually stops treating attributes in isolation. It begins explicitly pairing names together.
Right, you're looking at lessons like 47, El-Fatter, El-Khaliq.
Exactly, pairing the originator with the creator. Or lesson 51, El-Hayy El-Qayyum, pairing the ever-living with the sustainer of existence. And profoundly, lesson 56, El-Qahhar El-Muntaqim, the subduer and the avenger.
Those are definitely heavy pairings.
But this structural shift is everything. It demonstrates that advanced theological understanding isn't about isolating concepts in a vacuum. God does not operate in a vacuum, right? Advanced understanding requires recognizing the interplay, the friction, and the cosmic equilibrium between attributes.
Okay, but
Let me just finish this thought. The early lessons are merely learning the alphabet. The later paired lessons are writing the poetry.
wow. Okay, I have to stop you right there. Calling hours upon hours of divine grace and lordship merely the alphabet completely undersells the theological weight of what is happening in the first 30 lessons of this series.
I don't mean to diminish it, truly, but learning individual letters doesn't mean you know how to formulate a sentence.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on how we actually measure intellectual weight here. You're pointing to the pairing of concepts as evidence of advanced cognitive demand, right?
Yes, because synthesis is harder than isolation.
But let's look at the sheer duration dedicated to singular concepts, even much later in the sequence. Take the attribute of love, el-Vidud. That's covered in lessons 35 and 36. This is a singular concept, yet it receives 2 full parts totaling over 3 hours of theological exposition.
It's a deep dive, certainly.
It is 3 hours dedicated to a singular attribute. If the goal of the curriculum was simply to rush the student to synthesis, to get them to the poetry of paired attributes, why pause everything? Why dedicate such an immense block of time to exploring the singular depth of divine love?
Because love is complex.
It strongly argues that singular depth continually overrides breadth. The curriculum asserts that diving endlessly into one attribute yields more theological truth than simply placing 2 attributes side by side and looking for a paradox.
Okay, but placing 2 attributes side by side is never simply placing them side by side. It is an exploration of conceptual density, which is frankly far more demanding than conceptual duration. You point to the 3 hours spent on el-Vidud over 2 videos. I look at the immense density of the later lectures.
Give me an example.
Take lesson 61, el-Musib el-Hafiz, the responsive and the preserver.
Which is a dense lesson, I agree.
It is incredibly dense, and it runs for nearly 2 hours. When you study el-Musib and el-Hafiz together, you aren't just learning 2 definitions of God. You are being asked to solve a profound theological tension.
Right.
Think about what those 2 names mean in practice. God as el-Musib is the God who responds to the specific, localized, often deeply personal plea of an individual. A person prays for rain for their specific crop, and God responds.
The intimate, responsive nature of the divine, yes.
But you have to hold that simultaneously with el-Hafiz, the preserver, the God who maintains the overarching objective physical laws and cosmic order of the entire universe. So how does God alter reality to answer one specific prayer, responsiveness, without breaking the universal laws that preserve the cosmos, preservation?
It's a paradox.
Exactly. When İslamoğlu pairs these attributes in a nearly 2-hour window, he forces the listener into a demanding cognitive task. He asks them to map the geometric intersection between localized divine intervention and universal divine order. Spanning one concept over 3 videos is a test of endurance. But holding 2 massive interacting theoretical frameworks in your mind simultaneously, that is the true heavy lifting of the curriculum.
It is heavy lifting, absolutely. Holding the responsive and the preserver in tension requires an incredibly robust theological framework. But if you're asking the listener to hold that massive cognitive load, we have to ask, who is the person expected to carry it?
What do you mean? The student.
Right. But you can't run that kind of conceptual software on a totally unprepared operating system, which brings us to what I consider the most fascinating structural anomaly in the entire series, Lesson 25.
Vayan insani inshası, Revelation's construction of the human.
Exactly. Out of dozens and dozens of lessons, it is the rare title that is not simply the name of a divine attribute. And look exactly at where it is placed in the curriculum.
Following el-Elah.
Right. It comes immediately following the exhaustive 2-part study of El-Elah, the Most High, in lessons 23 and 24.
It's a very distinct pivot point. I'll give you that.
But it's more than a pivot. It is the culmination point. This placement is incredibly deliberate. The curriculum has walked the listener through the introduction, then lordship, mercy, sovereignty, forgiveness, and finally, the ultimate transcendence of El-Elah.
Yes.
Once that sequence is complete, the human understanding is officially constructed. The title literally tells us this. The human has been built. The singular traits have built the vessel. Everything that follows, all that heavy lifting you just mentioned, is secondary to this foundational construction. The primary theological goal was getting to lesson 25.
That is, well, it's a compelling way to view the anomaly, but I completely disagree. I don't see it as a culmination at all. I see it as a prism.
A prism? Wait, how so?
Think about what a prism does. You send this massive, single beam of foundational white light into it, and what comes out the other side? It fractures. It breaks into a highly complex, multicolored spectrum.
Okay.
The human being, constructed by revelation in Lesson 25, acts as that prism. Before Lesson 25, the attributes are absolute, universal constants, mercy, lordship, transcendence. But once the human psyche is fully structured to receive them, the curriculum's light fractures into much more complex, nuanced, and operational attributes.
Define what you mean by operational here.
I mean attributes that define how God acts dynamically within the complexities of human history and individual lives. Immediately following Lesson 25, we don't get the broad, monolithic strokes anymore. We get Lessons 26 and 27, El-Habir, the all-aware. We get El-Malik, the sovereign, in 28 and 29.
Right.
These require a human subject to be aware of or to exercise sovereignty over. Lesson 25 isn't the end of the foundational journey. It is the necessary catalyst for the complex phase to begin. It's the exact moment the student is finally equipped to handle the multifaceted, refracted reality of the divine.
Okay, I appreciate the prism metaphor, and I agree that the attributes become more operational post-Lesson 25. But if the light is fracturing, we have to look very closely at how those fractured rays are actually organized. And this is where the underlying sequence of the curriculum absolutely dominates the theology.
Are we talking about the dialectic of majesty and grace?
Let's talk about the dialectic of majesty and grace.
That's a crucial tension in any theological framework.
Precisely. And İslamoğlu handles it entirely through sequence. You pointed earlier to the late pairings of majesty. Lesson 56, El-Kahar, El-Muntakim, the subduer and the avenger.
Yes.
Those are overwhelming, almost terrifying concepts of divine power and retribution, but we have to ask why they don't appear until Lesson 56.
Because the listener isn't ready for them.
Exactly. But look at what they were ready for. The curriculum begins so heavily, so exhaustively with mercy. El-Rahman and El-Rahim are lessons 13 through 16. El-Ghafur, the forgiving, is lessons 21 and 22. By the time the student finally encounters the subduer and the avenger in Lesson 56, their entire theological worldview has been saturated in grace for over 50 hours of intensive lecture.
So you're arguing it creates a psychological safety net.
More than a safety net, it creates the entire epistemological lens, because the listener has spent months internalizing God's unconditional mercy. Any later pairings of majesty or vengeance are inherently subsumed under that initial massive framework of grace.
I see where you're going with this.
I have to press you on this. Doesn't the extremely late placement of these majestic attributes inherently prove that grace is the singular lens through which all later complexity must be viewed? The foundational attributes dictate the terms of the complex ones.
That assumes that late placement implied as a subservient conceptual role, which is frankly a flaw in architectural thinking. The spire of a building is placed last, but is not less important than the foundation, right? It is the point of highest tension that defines the building's reach.
But a spire can't exist without a foundation.
Let's look closely at why El-Kahar and El-Muntakim are delayed, and why they are tarred. If a student stopped listening at Lesson 22 after finishing El-Ghafur, the forgiving, they would actually have a highly distorted, overly permissive view of the divine.
Distorted?
Yes. They would have an incomplete theology where actions have no cosmic consequence. The curriculum explicitly delays the majestic and subduing attributes because pairing them requires an immense amount of intellectual maturity to understand them properly.
Maturity to understand vengeance?
Maturity to understand that divine vengeance, El-Muntakim, is not human anger. Human vengeance is petty, it's emotional, it's reactive. Divine vengeance is the necessary, mathematical balancing force to divine mercy to maintain cosmic justice.
Right. Maintaining the balance.
But if someone oppresses the weak, God's mercy to the oppressed demands retribution against the oppressor. Teaching these forces in tandem, late in the curriculum, is the only way to achieve theological equilibrium. The grace doesn't subsume the majesty provides the necessary boundary that makes the grace meaningful.
But wait, if the majesty is the boundary that makes the grace meaningful, why not teach them together from the start? Why not have Lesson 1 be the merciful and the avenger. The decision to separate them by 40 lessons to let the student live exclusively in the realm of mercy and lordship for months of real-time study is a profound pedagogical choice.
It is a choice, yes.
It wires the listener's brain to default to the foundational attributes when they finally encounter the complex pairings in the late 60s like Lesson 69, Rifi el-Muhiyye, the exalter and the giver of life. They are processing that complexity using the monolithic tools they forged in the first 20 lessons.
They are using the tools, yes, but the object they are building is entirely different. You cannot build a complex machine using only a hammer. The paired lessons require a dialectical synthesis that a purely foundational approach simply cannot accommodate.
Let's get into the specifics of that dialectical synthesis, because I think this is where our perspectives really clash.
Okay, let's look at Lesson 47. El-Fater el-Khaliq. Superficial translations often render both of these simply as creator in basic texts, but İslamoğlu dedicates an hour and 41 minutes to separating their definitions and then locking them together.
The cleaving versus the proportioning.
Exactly. Fater implies a cleaving, an initiation of existence from absolute nothingness. It is a rupture in the void. Khaliq, on the other hand, implies measuring, proportioning, and actively shaping that which now exists, giving it physics, giving it boundaries.
Okay.
To understand God as creator in this advanced curriculum, you cannot just rely on a foundational monolith that says, God makes things. You must hold the ontological rupture of nothingness and the meticulous mathematical proportioning of reality in your mind simultaneously. That is why the later half of the series is the true theological goal. It moves the student from being a passive recipient of foundational grace to an active participant in theological synthesis.
Yet, without the profound understanding of Rob, the sustainer, which the curriculum builds over 3 dedicated lessons early on, the distinction between the cleaver and the shaper becomes mere philosophical trivia.
Trivia? Really?
Yes, trivia. It becomes an abstract physics lesson. It's the lordship, the Rob, that gives those acts of creation meaning for the human being. If God is just the cleaver of the void and the shaper of physics, he is just a distant architect.
I see your point.
But because the curriculum front-loads Rob, the listener understands that the God who cleaves the void is their sustainer. The foundational attribute is the anchor that prevents the later, highly technical philosophy from drifting into pure abstraction.
I don't disagree that lordship is vital to making the theology personal, but the curriculum itself maps an evolution away from just the personal. We've talked about the shift from singular to paired attributes, but it's also a shift from the absolute to the relative, From God and his essence to God in dynamic relationship with the cosmos.
Expanding outward.
Yes, the paired attributes consistently reflect this dynamic friction. Look at Lesson 62, El-Kavi El-Majid, the perfectly strong and the glorious. Or Lesson 68, El-Fatah El-Kafi, the supreme opener and the sufficient one. These are not static pillars holding up a roof.
They're more active.
They are moving gears in a vast theological engine. You need to understand how God opening a new path for a civilization, El-Fatah, interacts with his ultimate sufficiency, El-Kafi. The curriculum wants the listener to see the gears turning, not just admire the concrete slab they sit on.
Which brings us to a fascinating convergence in our perspectives. Even as we fiercely disagree on the ultimate pedagogical core of this series, what we are really debating here is how the organization of an 86-part curriculum shapes its ultimate meaning.
Right. Whether the true power of El-Esmaul Husna dersleries lies in its exhaustive singular early foundations protecting the human psyche, or in its intricate paired later syntheses forcing the mind to expand, we are both looking at a meticulously engineered intellectual journey.
Absolutely meticulously engineered. The scale of this endeavor by Akabe Media really is staggering when you step back and look at it. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of views across the playlist, signifying an audience deeply engaged in this demanding long-form theological discourse.
Yeah, it's impressive.
People are dedicating hundreds of hours of watch time to track these precise conceptual shifts we're debating.
It is a profound testament to the value of structured knowledge. In a world of, fragmented sound bites and superficial hot takes, this curriculum demands endurance.
It really does.
It suggests that to truly understand the divine attributes, one must submit to a rigorous pedagogical process. Whether you believe that process is primarily about building an unbreakable foundational worldview, as I do, or reaching a state of complex cognitive equilibrium, as you argue.
And both of those processes require immense dedication from the listener. The transition from the basic to the complex, from the monolithic single attribute to the dialectical pair, is a journey I highly suggest listeners explore for themselves in the Akabe Media material.
I agree.
Tracing that progression, actually feeling your own cognitive load shift from absorbing deep, singular concepts of mercy to balancing the dialectical tensions of cosmic justice, it's a profound intellectual and spiritual experience.
It really is, and it leaves us exactly where we started. When you look at that vast, intricate architecture of theological knowledge, you have to ask yourself what truly makes it work. Is it the dizzying, brilliant tension of the interacting forces high above, forcing the mind to balance paradoxes? Or is it the silent, singular, monolithic foundation buried deep below, ensuring the human spirit doesn't collapse under the weight of it all? We'll leave you to ponder the architecture for yourself.